Hello again. Hope everyone is having a happy holiday season. Today I will present what I consider to be one of my most important reviews to date. I'll be comparing two exceptional artist grade colored pencils. Those being the 60 set of Faber Castell Polychromos and the 72 set of Prismacolor Premier pencils. A quick bit of background. I have done light-fast comparisons for the 48 set of Premiers and the 60 set of Polychromos, although I felt the Polychromos performed slightly better in the light-fast tests. Both pencils performed quite well compared to budget or student-grade pencils, so both of these sets are acceptable for archival quality drawings. If you've seen some of my videos, you may have noticed the odd rant related to Prismacolor quality. And this has mainly been directed at the Scholar student grade pencils. I have two sets of Prismacolor Premiers, and I've yet to have any issues with broken leads or flaky wood. On to the review. The subject is Henry Cavill as the Man of Steel. I thought it would be a fitting subject, as I had previously done a review of the Scholar pencils versus Faber Castell Polychromos using the Man of Steel as the subject. I recently worked with the 48 set of Premier pencils doing a drawing of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I was pretty happy with the 48 set. The 72 set I like even more. First, you have all the colors you really need. The black and white Premiers really can't be beaten, and I usually combine these with any of my other pencils that I'm working with. The 72 set also comes with grays, lots of them. 20, 50, 70% warm gray, 20, 50, 70% cool gray, 20, 50, and 70% French gray. For skin tones, you have a light peach, blush rose. To darken things up, burnt ochre, light umber, sienna brown. For really dark, there is dark brown, dark umber, and sepia. To adjust skin tones, you have ginger root, cream, sand, and beige. I'm so used to not having any grays that I also enjoy using lilac, parma violet, cloud blue, and jade green as substitute grays for the skin tones, and these work really well depending on the effect you're trying to get. Now there are larger sets of Prismacolors, the 132 set and 150 set, but I didn't feel I was lacking any colors with this set. When it comes to blending, I've yet to discover anything that blends easier than Premiers. For layering, you can usually layer darker colors over lighter ones without any issue. They are so soft sometimes it is difficult not to blend them when you try to layer. Some comments on the drawing. I've done most of the face using light peach and peach. I've used cloud blue and lilac rather than gray in places. Eyebrows are dark brown, sepia, and black. Light umber for shading around the eyes. I lighten areas of skin with cream, ginger root, and white. For the blue of the suit, I've used light aqua, peacock blue, Copenhagen blue, and indigo blue. The blues are very intense, but I have noticed that the dark indigo in the Polychromos set is darker than the indigo blue for the Premiers. The Premiers go on quite smoothly, but you have to sharpen them often. This can make filling in large sections like the suit and the cape a bit of a chore. For the cape, I use carmine red, crimson red, and crimson lake. For the lightest sections, I have used canary yellow. I've used similar reds for the S symbol as I did with the cape. For the yellow section, I've used gold, silver, and lemon yellow. The Premier pencils are reasonably forgiving, but you do have to plan a bit. For instance, with the cape, I might lay down the dark sections of red first, then go over these with what I might call the base red. I might even try to fill in the tooth of the paper. I would then lighten out the edges of the base red, and finally I would go back with the darker red to highlight the dark sections and the white to lighten up any areas that need it. For the skin, I'm usually more conservative. I will often use light peach for my first layer and usually use this to map out where the dark areas are. I will then continue to add dark layers until I get the shading I want. I would then test burnish with the light peach or a darker color if needed. If it becomes too dark, then I might lighten with white. If things aren't dark enough, I will try to layer with a darker skin tone. A couple of issues I have noticed with the Premiers. If you have layered things heavily and then you decide to add another layer, it will sometimes blend with the other layers unevenly and look quite awful. The colors tend to smear, especially if you haven't burnished them well. Because the pencils are soft, you will get little bits falling off all over your paper. You should use a brush to keep your paper clean because you really don't want indigo blue flakes when you are burnishing your skin tones. Lastly, it is hard to get fine details because it is difficult to keep the pencils sharp. The points just don't last. This is where I think the pencils are great for 90% of the drawing, but you really want to use a pencil with a harder lead for the details. Verithin, maybe? I'm almost done with the Prismacolor Premier side, and I think things went fairly well. No real complaints. I've got bits of blue, red everywhere on my paper, but that is my own fault because I haven't used a brush. It is on order. A couple things to point out. I'm using Faber hot press watercolor paper. It works great for colored pencil drawings, and if I want to, I can use my Inktense blocks or pencils to quickly fill in the background. I will probably have to come back to this side to fix things up later, but first I need to complete the rest of the drawing. The Challenger is a 60 set of Faber Castell Polychromos pencils. I've done several drawings with these. My most recent one was a drawing of Tom Petty. I really enjoyed working with the pencils on that drawing, and it was one of the motivators to do a comparison review with the Premiers. A couple of things to point out. The white isn't opaque as a Premier white, but it is a very hard pencil and great for burnishing. The black isn't as intense as a Premier black, but it holds a point, which is great for detail. While I usually have a spare Premier black and white for my drawings, I also have a spare Polychromos black and white when necessary, although for some reason I can't find my spare black. The last thing I will mention is that I'm using the Light Flesh pencil, which doesn't come with this set. Medium Flesh is too intense. You will need to buy a Light Flesh. Just buy the single if you choose to work with the 60 set of Polychromos. I start by filling in a bit of the hair using Van Dyke Brown and Walnut Brown. The first thing I notice is how much smoother these pencils feel. When you have a very sharp tip, the pencils seem to just glide over the paper and still leave a good amount of pigment. With the Premiers, the tip doesn't last and the soft waxy pencils seem to cling. Although the Premiers have a good amount of pigment, it sometimes feels like work. With the Polychromos, a freshly sharpened pencil seems to go on smoothly and last a lot longer. Of course, as they do get dull, they will start to leave more gaps in the tooth and won't go on as smooth. For sharpening, they sharpen great, as long as you have a good sharpener. I did break one lead. While sharpening, I got a bit of a twitch and snapped the end off a cream pencil. This reminds me, I did have issues with the indigo blue for the Premiers. After it broke twice, I just grabbed the indigo blue from my 48 set. The Tuscan Red was the other Premier pencil that broke on me, but I opted to use Crimson Lake as an alternative color. 3 breaks for the Premier half of the drawing isn't great, but I can live with that, as long as it doesn't feel like a drama. 1 break for Polychromos, and it was completely my fault, so no complaints. The Polychromos layer amazingly well. Blending, however, requires a little more work. You will need to press harder to blend, and you really need to plan more about what colors you want to blend. Flesh tones include, of course, the light flesh I've added as a single, medium flesh, cream, raw umber, burnt ochre, burnt sienna, walnut, and Van Dyke Brown. The set comes with a warm and cold gray 2, a warm gray 5, and Cold Gray 4. These work quite well for shading. I do find I spend more time on the face while working with Polychromos. Part is due to the blending, but also because you can get more details in features like the eye. Unfortunately, I have a tripod in my way, so it's often difficult to get in those details. The eye is done using mostly green, of which the set has a great selection. Hair is Van Dyke brown, black, walnut brown for dark sections. Highlights include cobalt green, white, cream, and light yellow glaze. There are some medium tones to the hair, which include raw umber, dark cadmium yellow, and cadmium orange. It'd be nice to have a darker brown for the hair. There is a sepia, but it doesn't come in this set. There's a great selection of blues for the suit, same with reds. I did find that I had to get into the red violets and purples to really get the dark red highlights around the S symbol. This was also the case with the cape. So while the set gave me all the colors I needed, it wasn't as simple as 1, 2, 3 like the Premiers. I've completed most of the hair and the face. Because of the shading, the Polychromos side was by far the more difficult, but they handled it well. I will note a few issues I have with the 60 set. My biggest complaint is the price. For me, the set was about $120, which works out to $2 a pencil. And even then, I still need to add a light flesh to that. The 72 set of Prismacolor Premiers was less than $40, or about 50 cents a pencil. Premiers may wear out a bit quicker, but I would still say you're getting 3-to-1 value with the Premiers. Slight change of topic, but Premier sets can usually be found quite cheap on Amazon during Black Friday sales and Boxing Day sales. So cheap that I would strongly advise people to not purchase the Scholar pencils. The quality of the Scholars is so bad that you are far better off spending a few more dollars for the Premiers. Now back on topic. The second thing I've noticed with the 60 set is that the colors are all quite intense. There are no light colors. Even lightened with the Premier white, most of the pencils are quite intense. Now this is sort of a good thing, but if you're really trying to get a light green or blue tone, almost off-white, you really can't do it with this set. The 120 set has lighter tones, but that is a pretty big jump in cost, and I really can't recommend it to an amateur artist. Other than that, I really enjoy using these pencils. You do need to take your time. You can't rush things. You need to layer. You need to make sure you've filled in the tooth of the paper and burnished everything. They do smudge, but no worse than the Premiers. They flake less, but you should still use a brush. I like both the sets. I feel I could do more or do a better job with the Polychromos pencils. It would probably take more time and be more challenging. The Polychromos pencils are beautiful pencils and quite sturdy. As I tend to be a bit clumsy, this appeals to me. For details, they are much better than the Premiers. For light fastness, the 60 set is pretty solid, with 57 pencils in the set having their top light fast rating. For me, buying a 60 set or a 120 set is a fairly big financial commitment. These are pencils you would want to take care of, and you will always be purchasing singles to replace the more commonly used pencils. The Premiers are very easy to use. They should appeal to beginners and amateur artists. It may take a drawing or two to get the feel for them. Price-wise, these things are a steal. They are so inexpensive that I want to draw with them. The Polychromos I tend to covet and feel I should only use for worthy topics or drawings. The Premiers hold up great in light fast tests for the 48 pencils I have tested. I haven't tested the 72 set, and I imagine there are some weaker pencils in that set, but I am impressed so far with what I have seen. Because of the softness of the pencils, I do feel they work better when combined with a harder pencil that can be used for details or even burnishing. Polychromos work for this. Lyra Rembrandt come to mind. If you are just getting into drawing, I would advise going with the Prismacolor Premiers, especially if you are on a tight budget. The 72 set is great. You probably don't need a bigger set. If you live someplace where Polychromos are comparatively priced to Premiers, then Polychromos would be my first choice. I feel they are much better pencils, but if Premiers are 3 to 4 times cheaper, for someone who's just starting out, you really don't need Polychromos pencils. If you've been working with student grade pencils, you've got some great skills and you want to take things up a notch, maybe Polychromos are for you. Now everyone has different opinions, so I would suggest checking out a couple other comparison reviews before making your decision. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. I hope to post something in the next 2 weeks before I have to go back to work. Take care.